Celia Cavalli. Welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you so much, Erica. I'm so honored to be here.
Yay, I am ready to do this, and we have quite the topic to talk about today. And I know a lot
Mhm.
of people listened to your last episode, which I'll include in the caption below. It got around like 300 views, and I got some like great messages, and everyone was like, dang, she is a badass. So I'm sure everyone's really excited to hear from you today on the topic of supplements. So that's going to be our focus. And I just see a lot of people thinking, okay, well, just because it's a supplement and it has a natural label on it, it is good, right? But there's some things that people really need to pay attention to when it comes to picking supplements and if you really need them and if they actually make a difference. So I just kind of want you to share your story with taking any supplements and then just kind of how your perspective has changed.
Yeah, so this is a topic you and I are very passionate about. So to preface this, I was actually working in the supplement industry since I was a teenager. So I got into the industry young. I was a personal trainer. So I've sold supplements almost my entire adult life. And I'd always be the person, when I worked at GNC, I'd have the big book of like what everything does, and I'd be looking through it, like what does John's wort do, and blah blah blah. And then there was like this moment where I realized none of this stuff is regulated, right? Like none of it is. Oxylete Pro was one of my favorite supplements back in the day. It was a fat burner, and all my friends and I would take it, and it was basically like crack. Like you would take it and you were just dialed in, like you could clean your whole house. Turns out it was actually killing people. So people were having heart attacks from the supplement. So they ended up taking it off the market. So there's these things that aren't like no supplement is regulated. So anything can be in it. It's kind of like a free for all. And you and I both have gone down the holistic health journey. And I, at one point, was taking upwards of like 30 to 40 supplements a day. I'd have this big pill case I'd bring with me, like an old person. That's like my AM, my PM. I had my afternoon pills. And there's a lot of problematic stuff that can happen with that. I mean, now, today, I'm my healthiest I've ever been. I only take a prenatal because I'm pregnant. That's that's it. That's all I take now. And I think a lot of people are taking these supplements and they don't realize that first off, you may not need it. Second off, it could be doing damage. And it actually can. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And third, like, do you know why you're taking what you're taking? A lot of times these things are just pushed on us, commercials or naturopaths, and it's like, do we understand why we're taking the things we're taking, and are they actually helping us?
It's also scary because a lot of the packaging of supplements looks so nice and they make these really bold claims like, oh, cancer support or even immune support. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a healthy immune system. And for a supplement to claim that this is the elixir for your immunity is pretty ridiculous. And I think what happened with this is a lot of people, especially during COVID, were kind of like, well, F the establishment, F big pharma, and all these sketchy chemicals and vaccines. And I get why people were questioning all that. But at the same time, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance if you're not questioning a supplement or an herb or a bitter because no one knows what's in these capsules. So it's just really funny to me to see people just be that confused. And everyone's like, oh, well, big pharma, they just want your money. They just want to keep you sick. But let me tell you that if you're seeing a naturopathic doctor, some of them just want your money too to push their supplements because they get a kickback on it. So to say, oh,
Mhm.
well, doctors get a kickback on pharmaceuticals, well, why aren't you talking about naturopaths who actually have more cash-based businesses because they're not covered by insurance? They're actually making a lot more money than a lot of just regular physicians. So it's
100%
just
true.
crazy not to question it. And I think some people need to come into a middle ground here because
Well,
there's
and
a
it's the
place
same.
for pharmaceuticals and maybe a place for supplements if you are really deficient in something.
100%. 100% what you said. So, like, I have a problem with, like, you're saying the people who are, like, anti, pharma, anti, VAX, whatever. It's like, yeah, but at the same time, you're eating pizza from Pizza Hut. You don't know what the hell is in that. You're taking all these random supplements, like, it's the cognitive dissonance at the end of the day. It's like, "Oh, big pharma is bad, they're out to get you." Well, then why are you also buying all this processed food that's killing you too? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was one particular girl on Instagram who was posting about how bad big pharma is, but then she was also showing that she eats, like, all the processed junk food, and I'm like, "That's really bad for you too." So, like, where's the line to draw? Like, if you're gonna complain about something, then, I mean, whatever, but we won't go down that rabbit hole, but, like, yeah, I think that, there's a lot of natural paths that are good that say test, don't guess. And, they'll test your blood work and see, but even that's just a snapshot in time. You don't know unless you did like consecutive days of blood work, the food you ate the day before is going to affect your blood work. So it's like, it's hard to know exactly anyways, like, what you're truly deficient in unless you're continuously testing your blood, and I've actually done that. I've had blood work done 4 days in a row where my B12 was super high one day, and then it was more normal the next day because I didn't eat as much meat. So it's like, I think everything's so individualistic, but I think a lot of things are pushed on people without, proper work that's being done on it.
So, when is there a place for supplements? And I guess how do people pick the right ones and then which companies to go with? I know that a lot of companies like Thorne and Designs for Health, they're pretty up there in like their quality assurance because they do several rounds of testing, whereas some other supplement companies will just do one round and then it's like, well, what else is in that pill? Are there other ingredients? And is there dirt in there?
I mean, it's scary, right? Because, like, when I worked in the supplement industry, a lot of companies were being sued for having lead in their protein powder. That was, like, a really big deal, and the reason why they did that because lead weighs a lot, so they'd put lead in the protein powder because it would make it heavier and they could sell it for more. So there's a lot of, greed in any industry, like, it's in any industry you go into, but, like, I think the supplement industry is not exempt and it's not regulated, so that's a little scary. But I think that, try and get your nutrients from food. I always think that if you're getting your nutrients from food, you're gonna be better off anyways, and then if you do actually need, like, vitamin D or something like that, like, you go to your doctor, and I always say go to your doctor, get testing done, like, listen to what your doctor has to say, but if you have something that's actually low, then at that point, yeah, but use a quality, like, get something that is quality tested, like you said, Thorn is, like, a higher quality, you wanna make sure that you're just buying stuff that is not just buying it because some influencer said, "Buy this green powder," you and I both feel a certain type of way about greens, but you wanna make sure that you're not just buying something because someone who's pretty is trying to sell you something. That's kind of really what it comes down to, and then also not just going to these naturopaths that can really scare you into, "Oh, everything's wrong with you," and then you think you're this broken, busted human who needs all this shit when really you just need to maybe change your diet. I mean, you and I were talking about it, and you and I have both gone to naturopaths. I've been to so many naturopaths. The last time I was on your channel, I was talking about my 5.5 year journey where I did not get better, and I was spending thousands of dollars a month that I'm grateful we were able to do it. It was very hard on us, but, like, in order for me to try and fix myself, I was spending thousands of dollars a month that someone who doesn't have a job because they can't work because 'cause they're chronically ill, very hard to do, like, it kind of is almost like these functional doctors can prey on people who are chronically ill, and I think that that's a whole other thing. I know we're gonna talk about that, but, like, I just feel like a lot of these supplements are not necessary. Like, how is it that back in 2020, my hormone specialist had me on 30 pills, meal replacement shakes, and now I don't take any of that stuff, and I'm better now than I was back then. Like, it's so weird to me. It's just such a mystery to me that, I could get totally better through nutrition, but she never once addressed nutrition.
I don't trust anyone with a discount code. Like Like you said, it's like just because an influencer is pushing supplements and maybe they look good on the outside, it doesn't mean these supplements are great for you. And like you said, I think people need to start with the basics first of nutrition and lifestyle, stress management, sleep, moving, getting outside. Dial in on that. And if that's not moving the needle, then maybe investigate a little bit further. If we're talking like young athletes, a lot of them are deficient in vitamin D because they're inside, they're in school all day. But you can add in more eggs or more cheese. Even salmon has vitamin D and some steaks as well. But if you do need to supplement because it's not in your diet, then go for it. But you have to pick a good company like Thorne, or I really like Micro Ingredients and Designs for Health. So it's just really interesting. And I think most people, if they get real with themselves and they look at their supplement cabinet, do any of them really make a difference? Like, can they actually see a noticeable difference? I
I would
just
be so curious. You guys,
yeah.
whoever's watching this, comment below. Do you have a supplement where you're like, "Dang, this really, like, changed my life, like, this blew me out of the water," because there's nothing I can think of, like, honestly, there's not a single thing I can think of that had, like, completely changed my life, and when I was my sickest, I would always watch, like, Dr. Eric Berg and all these other chiropractors, who would recommend, "Oh, if you just take B1, you're gonna feel so much better, it's gonna get rid of your anxiety," and I'm like, so I went and bought the B1, and it's like, here's the thing that people don't tell the general public is it even bioavailable? Is it? Because the thing is, your body's so complex, like, I think we try and simplify everything, and it's not like that, like, our bodies are very complex. You can get a ton of B12 from, supplements, like, if you were to take a energy drink and drink it, it may have, uh, 2,000 times your B12 you need in a day. However, your body may not be able to convert that or use that, so it's just floating in your blood until you excrete it, if you do excrete it, and at some point, it becomes toxic. So, at what point are we noticing any benefit versus the ramifications? Because I'll say this, when I was taking all my supplements, I was having extreme anxiety, and I'm like, "Where is this coming from? This is not normal." And this may be something you wanna look into if you are watching this and you are taking multivitamins, hair pills, especially, like, hair, skin, and nail pills, you're drinking energy drinks, you're taking, maybe cognitive, like, thinking, like, intense thinking or, like, a nootropic. Look at how much B12 you are taking every single day, and I can almost guarantee you, you're taking unreal amounts. When
Mhm.
I added it up, I was like, "I'm taking so much B12, I should probably be dead from B12," and as soon as I stopped taking all of those supplements, instantly, it was like 2 days later, I felt completely better. Like, it could be causing your anxiety. I'm not saying this is causing your anxiety, but you could be taking too much of something, and in this day and age, I think we think more is better, and a lot of times it just isn't. So, if you are taking a ton of supplements, I really urge you to actually bring that to your doctor or at least look at it yourself and see how much are you actually taking and is this making you feel better?
That is such a good point, and I think also when you're taking that many supplements, it's just a constant reminder of your health, and it just has this anxiety like, "Oh, I'm so sick," or, "I need to rely on these to feel good." But I would say most people, if they do the basics day in and day out, they're going to get so much better. And hey, if the wackier things work for you, like grounding and red light and infrared sauna, great. Like do what works for you, but more often than not, it's really just the basics and you're also going to save a lot of money. I think
Mm,
I spent when I started getting this whole, like, illness last year with, like, mold and everything, I think I spent, gosh, like, $3,000 on supplements because I hired a functional doctor to help me. I was just so desperate, and I think a lot of these people just they are well-intentioned, but I think there can be this, like, preying on people who are, like, really hopeless too, and
yeah.
getting them to continue on in their program and, like, follow their steps. "Oh, first we're gonna heal the gut first. Then we're going to work on liver. Then we're going to work on hormone. Then we're going to address neurological. And it's like, wait a minute, how long do I have to be working with you guys? And
And
I'll agree, when I was on all the supplements, I got worse
yeah.
because of the financial stress, the anxiety that, dang, like, I'm so sick. This is a constant reminder that I'm so sick. And I was also away from my husband because they told me to like move out of my house for a period of time to see if it was like mold illness. And not like having that connection was also not great, but as soon as I moved back into my house and I stayed outside as much as possible and I started taking a pharmaceutical binder, which really moved the needle for me, which is why I don't like to hate on pharmaceuticals all the time. That really helped. And then just having a positive mindset and not clinging to a diagnosis.
Mm,
I think if you see a functional doctor, they tend to tell you so many things that are wrong and that they wanna work on, and you're autoimmune, you're reacting to everything, you're sensitive to all these foods, and we need to eliminate this and that, and it's like, you just are reminded how sick you are, and I think mindset's a key to all of this, and you don't have to add these extra things, and now I'm really only taking my binder and, krill oil just for my neurological symptoms and to up my omega-3s since I still struggle with fat absorption, and I'm still in this house and we're figuring it out and it's not totally clean. But other than that, like, I've just kept a meat-based diet and it's really helped a ton. I'm spending time with my husband and my dog and getting out there and just living life. Working out again, even though it was painful at first and fatigue crept in, I felt better each day, and I think it's important for people to have that empowered mindset and not be like, "Oh, this is my diagnosis and this is my life." And
um,
we see that with autoimmune. We see that with teenage girls who have mental health disorders. Some people have in their bio, "Oh, depression sufferer or anxiety or mental health advocate." And I'm like, "You are literally clinging to this identity and it's becoming your brand." And that
mhm.
doesn't help you to get out of it and move on.
And it's sad to see that, like, I think, we want to simplify things and we want to find, our group and our people, but it's like I think a lot of times, like, we don't realize, like, how detrimental that is when we label ourselves with something, how it becomes our reality. I remember when I was my sickest, I was going through it, and it was very, very challenging making it day to day to day, and I told my mom that I clung to the hope that, I wasn't always like this, so I could reverse this. There's gotta be a way that I can reverse this, and I clung to that story and I actively looked for people I could borrow hope from. Like, I would look online on YouTube. I would go on YouTube and look for stories that I now tell. But it's like back then, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. So I would look at people who've made it through, autoimmune. They've made it through mental health issues. They've made it through cancer and they've done it naturally or they've done it with just a little assistance, but they were able to make it through to another side where they're living better. And that was my hope. And I think, like, when we label ourselves with something, we're just locking it in. We're, like, clinging to that identity, and it's like, that's not you, you came into this world expansive and vibrant and ready to be, they always say, like, in spiritual communities, like, "Be the light," and it's like, we didn't come into this world to suffer. I mean, human suffering is inevitable, yes, but, like, we really did come here to experience love and compassion and growth, and not to cling to our idea of, like, I'm sick and this is gonna be my reality forever. Like, things can change, they do change, and really having that hope is everything. It's what got me through the 5.5 years of suffering. That was really a pivotal point for me, was having that hope and knowing that things could get better. So I think, to your point, having all the supplements every day, supplements can be helpful, yes, but at the same time, I think, a lot of times we kind of just lock into this routine without asking why. And I remember when I was going to different functional doctors for years. So they would always be like, "Oh, well, it's not working." we need to put you on this machine that takes your blood out and makes it ozone or whatever, and then put it back in, and like all these expensive therapies. And I'm like, actually, no, because I tried a couple of them. Acupuncture did nothing for me. I know a lot of people like it, but I'm like, you're sticking needles in my body. It's doing absolutely nothing. Anyways, like I won't rag on all that stuff, but I'll just say this: it's very expensive. And at the end of the day, your body is amazing. So whoever's listening to this right now, just know your body is incredible. You cut yourself and it heals. Your body knows innately what to do. When you give it the proper building blocks of food and proper nutrition, your body is a superpower. It's like it can do so much more than you realize. And it's like we don't need to always interfere. I think we just try and interfere so much with like, I need to go cold plunge. I need to do all these biohacking. It's like, do you actually need all that stuff? Probably not, and it's probably overwhelming your nervous system, keeping you from getting better.
Oh my gosh, the biohacking crowd. Where do I begin? I mean, again, if you find something that might give a little bit of an edge and you feel good, great. I'm not going to stop you. But when you rely on all the things, it can actually make life a lot more stressful because what happens when you're traveling at a soccer tournament and you're on the road and you don't have your cold plunge, you don't have your acupuncturist, like you have to still perform. And again, it's just coming back to the basics of staying nourished and staying hydrated. And Celia and I are really big proponents of a meat forward nutrition lifestyle just because you are getting a lot of nutrients for energy and focus and sport performance, and you're even getting creatine in there, which is another supplement a lot of parents ask me about for their athletes. And look, it is one of the most researched sport performance supplements for improving high intensity bouts and really shortening that recovery window. But there's creatine in meat. There's also carnosine in meat. So if you're eating that daily, that's your supplement technically. So you don't need to spend all this money on a creatine powder.
That tastes
Um,
like butt. Yeah.
yeah. And you have to make sure the company is being honest about what they're putting in that creatine powder. So,
Mm. And there's probably fillers in there and everything else that you don't want in your body. Also, for the parents of the athletes, moms, I'm talking to you. Eric and I were talking this morning about how beef is literally a beauty food. It is such a great food for radiance, for glow, for beauty. Like beef has such a bad rap, and I'm like, it needs better marketing because for real, the beef glow, the butter glow is like a real thing. It's like meat has this ability to give us all these nutrients that our bodies need, that they crave. And I think that, to your point, I remember being an athlete in high school, they were like, you need creatine, you should supplement creatine. Why supplement it when it's in the food? It's always going to be better getting it directly from your food than it is a supplement any day because it's more bioavailable. Your body can receive it better. And it's just overall, it's better for you than something that's powdered.
yeah, and also you get the creatine from the meat alongside everything else, the B vitamins, the iron, the magnesium, the selenium, just all the great vitamins and minerals. So it truly is your multivitamin supplement that you don't have to spend so much money on. And we've discussed this on the podcast before, but doing this kind of nutrition lifestyle is actually very economical and you do save a lot more money in the long run, which is why we promote it so much. And it's also like when you and I push beef and red meat, we're not selling anything. Like we're literally just like selling people back to themselves and the nutrients that they need. Like I can't get sometimes I can't get behind the people in the carnivore community who are pushing like extra things when they're like, "Oh, steak has all the nutrients you need, but buy my supplement." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
So actually, it was funny because I had someone the other day. She was like, "You're making so much money off of telling people to eat beef," and I'm like, "Who's paying me?" I I have if you. if you wanna expose who's paying me, because I don't even know.
Yeah.
I make nothing from Five Guys, I make nothing from it'd be great if I did, but
No
I don't
discount code. No.
no discount. I don't got a discount code, like, I make absolutely $0.00 from saying "eat beef." Like, I just know it works, and I don't wanna gatekeep what works. I mean, it's great, it's a great feeling, and I'm sure you get this too, it's a great feeling to talk about something, and people are like, "I'm so grateful you talked about that, it completely changed my life." Like, the payment may not be monetary, a lot of these influencers only care about the monetary. I think you and I have, like, a heart where it's like, we truly wanna see people do better. Yes, we need to make incomes, that's obvious, we live in America. But at the same time, I think there's a different level to it where it's like it's a passion for us. It's like we know at like a deep level this is helpful to people. And I think that by putting this information out there, it's like we don't expect anything in return, but to have someone come back and be like, hey, you changed my life because, I feel better, I perform better. Like that's a good feeling. Like that's a really, really good feeling.
Now, I want to shift gears to this whole idea and fear of toxins. We see everywhere, oh, don't drink out of plastic bottles, have organic bed sheets, have a certain type of deodorant. And I just
It's
always
gone too far.
wonder, is this toxic free lifestyle more stressful in the long run when you're just fearful of everything in your environment? Obviously, with me, I am sensitive to mold in my home, but I'm not gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I need to, like, revamp the whole house and get organic everything," because that's gonna be so much more stressful mentally, and then financially, this stuff isn't cheap. So, what are your thoughts on this whole toxic free trend?
So I'm not like a toxic free expert, but I'll say this. I like my bougie candles. I like my place to smell good. I like when people come over, it's like, oh, it smells good in here. I don't fall like obviously I don't overdo like I'm not gonna use Tide laundry detergent. I'll go for like one that's a little bit better. But even if I need to use Tide, I don't stress these things. I don't stress any of it because the thing at the end of the day, what we put on our bodies, yes, it's important to try to maybe not get so much harsh chemicals in your system. Yes. However, I will say this, what you're putting in your body I'm not gonna say far more important, but it makes a bigger difference in my personal okay, like, this isn't I don't know this, I'm not a scientist, but in my personal, like, journey, the what I put in my body is more important, and now I'll get on this too because people are like, "Oh, it has to be grass-fed, grass-finished beef." No, it's better that you're just eating beef in general, okay? Like, the fact that, like, beef is more nutrient dense than, like, whatever else you're gonna eat, okay, like, it's a good step in a good direction. I think that it's more stressful to be scared of toxins than taking good steps in good directions. So if you're using Tide Pods and all of that, whatever, and it really, really bugs you, switch it out. But if it's something where like we don't need to be so careful all the time of all these things unless it's something that's known to be like a weed killer or something like that. Like you're not going to spray glyphosate all over your house. Duh. But like if it's a, makeup product, I see people all the time online and they're like, throw out your Charlotte Tilbury. Like, no, bitch, sorry. No, like you can edit that out. No, I like that. I like how it makes my skin look. Don't let fear mongering destroy your universe because I think it's far more toxic to have these accounts on your Instagram that are like, this is bad, that's bad, you're gonna die if you do this. It's like, are you at the end of the day? I mean, these things can add up and there could be a toxic burden, but I think the real toxicity is the mental load and also what we're putting in our bodies. Like, I think that those things are really important. And like, as long as you have a good foundation, I don't think like stressing about these things is really key. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Like, how do you feel?
I agree. I think with the environmental stuff, it can become too much because then you really look at all of your products and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like my life is so toxic. I'm going to die, like I'm getting sick." And it's like just figure out your non-negotiables. Like, do I have an air filter in my bedroom? Yes, but I don't have like a perfect bed or I don't have certain perfumes or I still use like regular mascara. It's totally fine. I dye my hair, like whatever. But I think the food thing is really important, and I like your point that it's better to eat beef and single ingredient animal-based proteins than something else. But I actually saw this. I think someone sent you a DM when you were at Five Guys and they called you out. They're like, "Oh, but what about the seed oils?" And I know that you are not a fan of seed oils and you understand what the chronic consumption of them does to you, but if you're out and about, like, Five Guys cooked in seed oils make sense so that you at least get something in you. So I don't think there should just be this fear if you don't have the perfect food situation at a restaurant that you, like, starve yourself. That's not good for anyone.
I agree with you on that. I think that I always say like there's good, better, and best. Best is making your food at home where you know what you're putting in it and you know what you're getting in it. Um, but obviously, like, we're not perfect humans. There's no perfect human. And going through chronic illness, like it took a lot for me to get better. But I will say this, now that I am better, I can handle quite a bit more stuff too. So like as you get better, you may notice like I can have, a little bit of seed oils here and there, and it's not gonna make me feel super sick or whatever. It's the chronic consumption that's more of a worry than it is the acute, like, if you go out to dinner and it's cooked in seed oils, you don't have to not eat it. It's just, it's one meal. It's not gonna, like, break your results. So I think there's, like, a lot of fear around all this stuff, and I do talk about seed oils because I hate them and I wish companies wouldn't use them. But at the same time, I was just at the airport. We just got back from Mexico, and literally I watched as they made my fajita meat with seed oils on it. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever. Your body can eventually get rid of this stuff. It's the chronic exposure to it that's harmful. But what's even more harmful is to be like, I'm just like freak out over it. It's like we live a life where we're imperfect humans in an imperfect world. There's no way you can avoid everything, but stressing out about it, I think, is more toxic than being exposed to it.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things where having it from time to time is not going to do too much. But I think in your case too, you prefer your beef cooked in other things because they have more nutrients than seed oils. So something like butter, you're getting vitamin D, E, A, K, and E, and those healthy fats as well. So it's just you prefer the nutrient density, which is totally okay. And that kind of segues me to the next topic here is diet culture. So you knew I was going to ask about this, but I just get confused what the phrase diet culture means because there's one camp of people online who talk about diet culture as in like eating clean and nutrient dense foods all the time and kind of shaming people for eating healthy most of the time and labeling them as orthorexic or having an eating disorder. But some people with autoimmune issues and certain sicknesses and severe mental health disorders have to pretty much
Mhm.
eat a clean, nutrient dense diet. So
Yeah.
I get really frustrated when these influencers online are like, hey, if you're not eating brownies and enjoying stuff from time to time, you have an eating disorder.
You're
It's
not
like,
living life,
whoa,
Erica.
wait a minute. You don't know my health history here, and you don't know how good I feel eating clean, nutrient dense foods most of the time. So I just have a huge problem with the diet culture definition online, and I don't think there's no objective definition of it. It's kinda like
Mhm.
the moderation crowd or eat balance. No one really knows what that means.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference between being scared of all foods because you're like, "Oh my gosh, this has toxins," or there's a big difference because I know that it depends on where you're coming from in a mental space too, because I've had people come to me online and be like, "I'm scared to eat anything," and that is a problem, like, that is straight up a problem. If you are scared of food in general, like, that's a problem, but if you choose to eat healthy foods because it makes you feel good, perform better, it keeps your autoimmune at bay. It keeps your symptoms at bay. Like why would you not? You know, like, why would you not? I choose to not eat seed oils, and, like I just said, I was in Mexico, I ate the seed oils. Yeah, that was a one-time event, which I try to mitigate that at any expense I can because I know what it does to my skin, I know what it does to my brain, I know what it does to like, I know these things, so it's like a informed consent, right? Like, I know what it's doing, so I try to minimize my exposure. Does that mean I'm never gonna be exposed? No, but, like, to your point, the diet culture, like the what is it, the diet culture dietitians are always out there like eat the donuts, eat the brownies, or like you're missing out on life if you don't have cupcakes. And it's like they're always slamming these cupcakes in their mouth, and I'm like, first off, your everything you do is filtered. Like, you have a filter on everything. It's, like, super blurry, like, we can't even see your face, honey. I'm just kidding, I'm being a little mean, but, like, the thing is, like, they come at it from this thing where, like, they're trying to say that people who want to eat healthy have an eating disorder, and I think that's just absolute BS, because some people have to eat I'm one of these people, I have to eat very well in order for me to maintain my quality of life without medication. Is it a choice for me to maintain my quality of life without medication? Yes, it is. I feel better and I look better. I could go down the route of being medicated and eating whatever I want, but I'm going to feel and not look as good. So I don't want to do that. It's a choice. It's not an eating disorder. It's not an eating disorder to want to look better and feel better. It's just not. The eating disorder would be problematic if you just chose not to eat or you developed an actual disorder where it's like you're doing something that's bad for you. If it once it becomes bad for you, even if it is like you're choosing to eat healthy all the time, but all of a sudden you're isolating yourself at home because you don't want to go out to eat with friends because it's too stressful, that is a problem. Like I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that that can be very problematic and it can hurt people mentally. So I think there's a balance to it, but there's also a thing where it's like these dietitians are just calling people out saying that they want like people have an eating disorder for wanting to eat healthy, and that's just not it's not true. It's like really backwards when you think about it.
It is backwards, and sometimes when they make the claim, "Oh, well, what you're doing is restrictive because you're only eating certain animal-based proteins or just, like, certain carbs and cutting out food groups," they it's just weird because it's like, what's restrictive about getting your health back and feeling good and looking good and having energy throughout the day that is lasting and not so up and down, having a stable mood, getting your autoimmunity into remission? Like, that's not restrictive to me. That's actually very liberating. So, I think a lot of these people just need to be a little bit more clear on what the definition is. And the definition that I've come up with over the years of diet culture, and this is just my personal opinion because there's really no objective way to measure it, but diet culture is more the restricting of calories. So it is a problem if our girls are not eating enough for sport performance and they're fatigued and they're getting musculoskeletal injuries or they have insomnia or bad cramps or they don't have a period at all. One of the biggest factors in missed periods is undereating. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what you're eating. If you're not getting enough calories, then you're probably gonna miss your period. So I think that's the true diet culture is severely under eating and doing this whole like 1,200 to 1,500 calorie a day nonsense. And it's just interesting. I think they need to mention that in the definition. I know a lot of women who eat clean and who eat meat based who are having 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day. So just because you're eating
Mhm.
exactly. Just because you're eating clean doesn't mean you are restricting calories. You actually have to up them even more. So it's just really fascinating to me that these people aren't talking about the calorie discussion and they're just like, "Oh, well, people are cutting out food groups and labeling foods as bad. And it's like, yeah, some people have to cut out food groups. Some people can't eat tomatoes. Some people can't have gluten. Like, it just is what it is because their body doesn't respond to that chemically. And this is what Michelle
Well, have you
Shapiro talks about, Michelle
yeah.
Shapiro, RD. She's like, look, we have to look at the mechanism and how people are responding to food groups and don't shame people and say, oh, well, you have an eating disorder because you're cutting that food out.
Well, did you see that the Wall Street Journal just published an article talking about how ultra-processed foods, so like 90% of what Americans eat, is causing brain damage, it's causing like, it causes all these issues, and it's like, at this point, you have to be living under a rock to not think that these things are to think these things are healthy for you, and this is the problem I have with all those dietitians is they're promoting these things, and it's like, we know scientifically that these things cause so many issues, and there's been such an uptick in the mental health crisis is through the roof. And I don't know a single person who doesn't know somebody who is affected by mental health. I myself have been through mental health issues with depression, anxiety, like all sorts of stuff. And it's like a lot of people don't talk about it because it's stigmatized. I made a point to talk about a lot of my journey because I want to break that stigma. And I commend Selena Gomez for doing the same thing. She's dealt with bipolar and a lot of stuff with her lupus. But all of this has to do, with so many things that are going wrong within our body, our mitochondria, our cells, and I won't go into that, but I think to your point, Michelle, is it Shapiro, right? Michelle Shapiro. She talks about how this stuff, it does have, side effects, and that all our bodies are different, but at the end of the day, to promote this as healthy, eating these things as healthy is very unhealthy and it can be very damaging, especially if you are dealing with something that requires a ketogenic diet or that does require you to be on a stricter, lifestyle protocol. Because at the end of the day, like we just want to all feel good. And if you're doing something that's damaging your cells and your body and you're feeling worse, that's not healthy. It's just not healthy.
I'll actually link Michelle Shapiro in the notes below. She's really great at just wrestling with a lot of these topics and kind of coming to a middle ground. She's not super dogmatic. I think when people get really dogmatic is when we should question even more. And what we're talking about today is like, look, like really eat to have the energy to maybe get rid of some of your symptoms that you're experiencing to improve your performance, your recovery, your sleep, and really pay attention. And it's a long journey to figure out what nutrition works for you and where you feel your best, but it is really worth it to experiment with and to eventually thrive. And we can't help but share our stories because we've been at rock bottom and just changing that nutrition piece and not needing all the supplements was actually something that we needed to do all along, was just the basics of nutrition.
I think that's the most empowering thing is knowing that, it is very empowering to realize that the basics are really where the magic is, like the nutrition basics, going out, getting sunshine, good, like putting yourself in a good, positive mental space where you're not thinking you're sick all the time, all these things where it's like they all pile on, but it's like the basics are really where the magic is. It's not in these all these extra things, these biohacking, all these things are being sold online. It can be very overwhelming and then also, these registered dietitians selling, and there's some great registered dietitians, but there's a lot that try and sell all this ultra processed food that makes people feel awful. And it's like, just look at it for yourself. I'm not saying, that you never can have ultra processed food again. I obviously have had ultra processed food and, that's fine. But knowing what it does for your body and knowing, okay, I can have this once a month or once every couple months, if you desire it, is more empowering than like going through life thinking that, "Oh, I can eat cupcakes every day and feel like total crap," and, like, wonder why. It's like and then have to buy all these excess things because 'cause you're eating the cupcakes every day. Now I need to cold plunge, I need to do this, I need to do that. It's like, come back to the basics. Like, that's really what it is listen to your body, come back to the basics.
I think we should stop trying to be perfect, but we should always do our best. And I actually got an amazing message today on Instagram from a mom of a teenage hockey player, and she's 13. And the mom was like, oh my gosh, like, I finally found a woman in sport who's talking about like a meat forward nutritional lifestyle. And like my daughter and I are doing it, and her mental health is the best it's been, her hockey performance is the best it's been. But yes, during Easter, my daughter and I had candy and chocolate, and she's not perfect. And I was like, that's great. Like, your daughter's human, and like a lot of people can get away with doing that. But the best thing that this mom said was overall, she craves her steak and she craves the foods that make her feel good. And it's become a natural deterrent from a lot of those things. And she'll have stuff from time to time and it won't crush her, but she kind of is just happy going back to what makes her feel best. And I think that's so powerful how your taste buds and your brain chemistry really just change over time, and you start to just really focus on nutritious foods.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's like it just goes to show too, like, when you add in more that benefits your body, you're not gonna crave all the garbage as much, like, you just don't but every now and then, it's like, yeah, if you have it, your body's more resilient to dealing with it anyways, like, your gut's more sealed, all of that, so it's like, you're gonna deal with things in a healthier way when you have healthier habits overall, but, like, we all live in our society, and we know that we're not gonna be perfect all the time, and I think the majority of Americans, it's kind of this all or nothing mentality of, like, "I have to eat salads every day." It's like, you don't have to. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to make a little bit, like a 1% better effort every single day, and that's really, like, what makes a huge difference over time. It really is.
Well, I love this conversation. And for everyone listening, if you want to leave a comment on what you're doing, what supplements you've tried, what has worked, please, we're happy to hear from you. And Celia's Instagram is in the caption below. And Celia, I also want you to just kind of talk about this group that you've created called Glow, which I think is the perfect name and just really embodies who you are. So if you just wanna talk about what it is and when it starts.
Yeah, so Glow is a group. For me, Instagram has always been, like, my community, like, my corner of the internet that's we have fun, we laugh, like, I always repost people's, like, comments and stuff. It's just we have a good time. I've always wanted our space to be great, and, it's because of you guys, like, the people out there that it is what it is. And so Glow was something that I wanted to create because there's so much confusion when it comes to nutrition, and that was the number one thing that I would get is people would come to me and say, like, "I can't do exactly what you're doing, but I wanna feel better, I wanna look better, I wanna learn more about foods," and I was like, "You know what? Hold my matcha latte," just kidding, but I was like, "You know what? Hold my steak. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to create an ebook that goes over in great detail, like, what these foods do, and how nutrients impact beauty, because a lot of us just wanna feel and look better, and I've had such a profound difference in just the way my face looks and my body, that I get a lot of people who ask, like, "Oh, what have you had done?" And I'm like, "Honestly, it's food," like, you can look like you've spent tens of thousands in plastic surgery just through nutrition, which is like the biggest, like, mind-boggling hack ever. I'm like, had I known about all this stuff when I was younger, I would have saved so much money. It would have been a game changer. I would have been hotter in high school. Like, don't we all want to be hot and feel good? Yes, it's true. We do. So I wanted to create a place where women could come together, maybe some men. I don't know how I feel about that yet. I haven't had any men sign up, so we'll see where that goes. But where people can come together and really like share tips and tricks. It's not just food. I wanted to educate on lifestyle too, gua sha, things you can do, sleep habits, sleep hygiene for better sleep. All of this compounds to create a beautiful life. And so it's a very non dogmatic approach. I want everyone to feel safe and not judged. I want people to be able to come into this space and be honest and open and to really learn and soak in and create connection. So for me, Glow was like, "Hey, bestie, like, come on in, come sit in my living room," kinda like Eric and I are doing with you guys right now, "and let's have a conversation, and let's all feel better and glow up together." So it was really kind of like a glow up group where it's just there's nothing toxic about it. It's not telling you how to eat in any certain way. It's just giving you information, and from there you can construct your lifestyle to fit your needs. And you have me as support for, just feeling your best, looking your best, and overall just thriving in life because that's what life is about. I truly like feel that it's about connection and thriving and finding purpose. And so I wanted to create a space that would do that. And so that's what Glow is for me.
I love it, and I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that, and I will include that in the show notes as well. So be sure, guys, to give Celia a follow, and I will see you on the next episode.